Here you go. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Krystian, and Krystian, we're going to dive right in. Um, please introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so my name is Christian. I work as a health optimization coach, so I deal with everything health, body, and brain oriented. With Emily, the topic of psychology is something I practice a lot, even with my clients, and it's a very important topic to get right. And yeah, I call myself the superhero coach as well as kind of the abstraction out of what I help my clients achieve, and that would be a small explanation of what I do.
Okay, cool. And can you please tell us your journey, how you got to doing what it is that you do?
Yeah, so how did I become who I am?
Exactly.
Well, I was a obsessive soccer player. I grew up in Poland for the first 13 years of my life, and then basically played soccer obsessively. Then moved to Sweden, which was a big change for me when I was 13, and it kind of left me, from kind of being surrounded and being this super popular kid to basically having no one and nowhere to kind of channel my energy or even get my feelings of respect and importance from. So everything became channeled into soccer, and then in Sweden, I actually began experiencing severe injuries compared to any of my teammates. So basically, went from completely identifying as this performer, which a lot of men do. We identify with our performance and with our ability to kind of be this powerful person, right? The superhero, and as the injuries occurred, I basically lost everything about me, because everything about me was who I was becoming. It was about who I was, how good I was on the field, how good I was performing, how dominant I was on the field, and how great I could perform. And so when that changed, everything was just taken away from me. And I became like a completely different person in a matter of one hamstring pull and then another and another. So my personality basically shifted completely. I became much more neurotic. I had no excitement whatsoever. My confidence in social situations became different. So did my physiology. But it was basically a very difficult time that kind of channeled me into a little bit of distrust with professionals that existed that were supposed to help me. People within physical therapy were very, very like, yeah, basically injuries happen and there's nothing we can do about them. And that, if you're an explosive player, you're going to get injured. So it was a conversation around what was common versus what is possible, which kind of uh, gave me this skepticism of professionals as these know-it-all, have it all figured out, and channeled me into really taking my curiosity, and basically my curiosity became correspondent to my stress response. So as I was extremely distressed and unhappy, the solution was to get extremely curious about the subject and find solutions where even the professionals, and because I was working with some of the best professionals in Sweden as far as biomechanics, nutrition, mindset, and they were all missing it. And as I was able to fix my own injuries, which is deal with my own problems, fix my own problems, just like the journey that you have gone through, Emily, which is to actually heal yourself, then you get this emotional attachment of, when I deal with my own pain, euphoria is on the other end. When I solve problems, there's really something amazing on the other end. So just like it started for you with your own pain, it started similar to me, because now I have this emotional attachment when someone is having a health problem. I'm like, listen, I've been there. It's not, you can't just outthink low mood. You can't just outthink um, low energy. So as that curiosity was born, I basically became a very confident problem solver, and moving, kind of continuing with my soccer journey. I was experimenting a lot. And from there, I kind of fell out of love with soccer, because I was more excited and interested in problem solving and kind of experimenting. And I became this crazy scientist as far as my performance was going, rather than the game on the field. I kind of became much more interested with the bigger game going on, and it included our psychology, the brain, and performance in general. So yeah, after that, I was involved in a lot of sales as an entrepreneur. Had a failed business that struck me really, you know. After soccer, I kind of jumped immediately into entrepreneurship. I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing. So I wasn't picky about the opportunities, and I kind of just went all in, all out through everything, and attempted to conceptualize this new identity for myself. And you know, I got a minor PTSD from that because strategy matters. So as I kind of you know, I risked a lot of things and I took a lot of big risks, and as that unfolded to be not what I thought it was, it definitely was a big strike. And the observation I was able to see with a lot of entrepreneurs who have a failed business, you know, it's really difficult on you and your confidence. So after that, I actually had a concussion a few months after, which kind of, you know, when you're attempting to solve your own problems, it's good to have your brain on your side. You know, if you can't focus, if you don't have energy, if you're emotionally unstable, it can be very difficult. So that's basically what I've been going through the last year, is healing my own brain, learning about the brain to kind of be able to even do the work. And now things have turned around and are going really, really well. So that's kind of the journey I've been on so far.
Amazing. Can you give a little bit more elaboration, if you feel comfortable, on the concussion and what happened
Yeah.
then? How,
Yeah.
because when you first told me about concussion, I didn't fully understand, and then when you
Yeah.
explained a little bit more, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. So concussion, it's good that you asked that, because concussions are very like, oh, you know, you hit your elbow, it hurts. But a interesting fact is that 50% of homeless people have had a major TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury, in their life.
Wow.
So it's like, were they homeless and then hit their head? Uh, Not necessarily. And so, you know, when it comes to your brain is very, very tender, and even a minor strike can have tremendous shifts in your personality. It can have major effects on your executive function, which includes self-control, attention, even ability to plan and organize. And you know, as I was noticing that, I literally became a different person. I had no energy. Even one workout would leave me burned out for 2 weeks. My strength just completely disappeared. So my nervous system was not engaging when I was attempting to go back to the gym. And basically, I was having the experiences of a overtraining syndrome. When I was attempting to look up my symptoms, it was saying overtraining syndrome, which I was surprised by. I was like, and at that time, I wasn't connecting it with the concussion. I had no idea why I was suddenly like dead. Like I had no energy. I was not motivated. Everything, like getting out of bed, felt like just everything is going against me. So that kind of drove me into that maybe there is something even deeper that our psychology exists in, that maybe you know, all the motivational gurus out there aren't really, they're onto something, because psychology does influence our biochemistry, but there's something deeper that is going to influence our energy levels, that is going to influence our emotional stability, things of that nature. And so as I was experiencing it myself, when I was losing all the attributes that I took great pride in, like being extremely energetic, being extremely good at handling stress, uncertainty, being extremely on the offense, which is actually related to your xiphoid nucleus in your brain. It's when that circuit activates and it activates together with your stress response, you are actually going to be confrontational to your challenges. But if it's not, then you're actually going to go into a flight and freeze mode rather than fight. So it's actually a separate circuit. So I was feeling like the day was attacking me, and I wasn't attacking my day at all. So the concussion really gave me a lot of insights, but on a personal level, it was very, very difficult because I wasn't able to exercise. I had something that is called post-concussive exercise syndrome, which makes you extremely fatigued. So even reading for 20 minutes left me drained. Like I was barely able to lift my arm, just a mental nervous system strain. And it just helped me to connect the dots between a lot of things, because my response, thankfully, I have gone through with this before because of the injuries. It was almost like, okay, I have a problem. I'm not going to bathe in it. I'm not going to, you know, feel like I'm just stuck. But it was a very difficult time. You know, even I don't talk about it much, but it was the hardest year of my life for sure.
Wow.
So yeah,
I thank you for sharing that. I've got some experience with the challenge and the threat response on a physiological level as well, and they've been found. There's been findings that you you have a physiological challenge response to a threat as opposed to the fight flight response if you feel that you have the resources to handle it.
yes,
And so I mean, you mentioned xiphoid something, and I'm like, I
definitely
don't know how.
do. Yes,
Yes, I don't know, understand that kind of. I
yeah,
haven't done that kind of research, but I think that with regards to like a mindset
mm,
approach, um, if you feel that you can handle it, if you do have the resources, then a task or a threatening task potentially can be seen more as a challenge that you can overcome as opposed to a threat that's going to, challenge
yeah,
you. Um, so that's something that when you were mentioning about the challenge and stress response. Um, okay, and you mentioned that the gurus, the motivation gurus are like onto something, but potentially something missing. What's this
yes,
missing piece that
yes.
you refer to?
Yes. So one of the things about xiphoid nucleus is that it's extremely rewarding for us to experience that feeling that we're
Okay.
confronting a challenge. It's very very rewarding. It lights up our pleasure centers a lot. So we as human beings, we enjoy facing challenge, and it's very very rewarding in of itself. But what I believe that is missing in kind of just do it attitude is kind of understanding how our brain works and who we are at our core. And you know, in 2002, maybe you've heard of it, the book Thinking Fast and Slow. He's talking about two systems in our brains, and he won a Nobel Prize for this discovery. And it's really that one. It's system one, which is kind of our intuitive emotional brain, and on top of that sits our rational cortex, basically, that we are able to direct and govern. And they do communicate with each other, but it's not a even split. Basically, the intuitive brain is really running our lives, and it's the core of who we are, the emotions, the biochemistry produced, and rationality is a tool. And depending on the health of your brain, you're going to have a certain amount of influence through rationality to your emotions. Just like we see it with people who are really struggling mentally, that communication is not 100% there. Their ability to make what is rational and to turn it into what is an emotional instinct is very different. So it's really kind of having a holistic view of how do we come to feel what we do. And psychology is huge, and it's also the tool that is the easiest to access immediately, because even just with communicating with you, Emily, I'm communicating my biochemistry to you, and you're communicating your biochemistry to me, which actually lights up mirror neurons in my brain, and it allows me to experience a similar attitude, similar values to yourself. So that's
Mm.
why surrounding yourself with the right community is so important, because the people, you know, and there is, the motivational gurus do have a point. The people we surround ourselves with do matter a lot, and they influence us on a neurological level, and it's very real. And nobody has to speak their values out loud. You can feel them on an intuitive emotional level. And so the power of the emotional brain is that it can comprehend a lot more, and it's much quicker to act. The rational brain is much slower. You know, we can only focus on so many things, we can only do so many things, but it's really what allows us to create like a accurate mental model of the world, that then we can create kind of coherency between what we rationally understand and how we emotionally react to things.
I think it's really interesting that you raised this up. I'm going to talk to you about this later as well, but I feel that emotions in general have been such a taboo. in
Mhm.
society. I think that only in the last 10, 20 years, we have therapy and therapists, and it's socially
Yeah.
acceptable, and it's, like even trendy or whatever, but it's shifting, but like our parents' generation, emotions, like therapy was a big deal, and it was like
Yeah.
a kind of no, it's very judged, huge judgment around that kind of stuff. And emotions in general was something that it was very unknown, fear of the
Yeah.
unknown. So therefore we fear emotions. We don't want to go there. We don't really want to talk about big emotions. We don't know how to handle big emotions. It
Yeah.
was just, this kind of um and I think that being able to approach this taboo and unknown topic of emotions in a rational way,
Yeah.
being able to understand how things work and why we do what we do, and the, impact emotions have on our mind and body, and the energetic aspects of emotions, and learning to process them and regulate them, and how and why, and all these,
Mhm.
rationalizing this whole, topic of emotions. I think that that is a huge key in making progress as well, with self-healing and with people in general. I mean, that it's one of my projects at the moment, that I'm working on a model on how to apply a more rational, like,
Mhm.
model and perspective to understanding emotions and dealing with emotions, so that it's more accessible to people.
Yes, and I love that. And it's actually, unless you have something more to add, I actually have a lot that I would like to share. There
Go
is,
for it.
for us men, now temperamentally, the big five personality traits are can actually predict your stance on therapy and like your conservatism, basically. But for men, and it is even taboo today, especially in like very conscientious conservative men and conservative people in general. Conservative people generally tend to believe that just 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 do it, just fix it, just get your butt up.
Get on with it.
And yeah, and on the other side of the spectrum, we have kind of like a more liberal view, which is kind of there is nothing you can really do about it, and it's not anything you can do about it at all, and you're just kind of you're just kind of left with whatever you have, right? So the truth can kind of be, both of these sides have their points, although one is going to evoke a stronger response in us depending on our stance. But I think it's important, and I'm going to be talking about the general male idea of mental health, and the general idea of masculinity and how it relates to emotions, because this idea that we need to be emotionless is there is there's a lot of interesting connections there. One is that people who are higher in dopamine, which is not like genetic or anything, but people who are extremely dopaminergically active actually have a diminished emotion as far as anything not related to ambition. So when you're extreme in that state of extreme drive, extreme motivation, you actually do have diminished emotion, which is kind of why this ideal of the stoic emotionless monster of a man comes in, right? And we all have that within us, and so do women. But it's important to understand that not having emotions is not an option. You do have emotions all the time, and some people tell me that they're not very emotional. I'm like, you are emotional. You just don't have the self-awareness, or you don't conceptualize what emotions are. Because at all times, and I'm actually going to connect this idea with leadership. There's a super cool book called Primal Leadership, and it talks about that the role of leadership is to help people maneuver their emotions and to experience the emotional states that will be empowering to them in the moment. Which And you cannot communicate what you don't feel. And when you communicate with someone, you're basically communicating your emotions. So if your message of just do it comes from a stance of judgment and not kind of lack of belief in them, and just like oh, fix yourself, your problem is irrelevant, you're actually communicating that, and you're not helping the person at all, because people don't hear the words that you're saying. They feel the emotions attached to those words and why you're communicating them. And even if it's rationally not present, that's really what we feel when we communicate. So really my mission as far as communicating how maybe we as men should strive towards, and what the ultimate kind of ideal for us to be is to be leaders. And that is not emotionless at all. It is actually to be extremely intelligent with how we help people around us, and that starts with ourselves. And so if we're not self-aware of the emotions that we're communicating, like if someone is motivated and I am in a and I'm going to be extremely pessimistic and have a fixed mindset, and just no matter what I tell them, if they share something that they're excited about, and my response to them is kind of, oh, cool, their excitement is going to automatically diminish. So this idea of self-healing and actually getting yourself to the point where you are able to contribute to people, which, this extreme like energetic altruism begins with yourself. You have to get your own problems solved, and that doesn't mean like a just do it attitude. We have not been dealt the same cards. Like, Emily, you shared some of your stories before. I cannot imagine, and you have not been dealt the same cards as I have, nor has even my mom. Like we talked on the phone the other day, and she was, me and her have been working a lot on kind of getting her to be able to move more and getting her to be able to be healthier. And the topic of self-love, that I actually have to love myself before I'm able to do things that I consider good to me, came up. And what struck me was that I haven't had those issues. The self-love hasn't been a big issue of mine. It has kind of always been present in some sense, and I do believe that it's part of the extreme neuroplasticity that happened early on. I was taken care of. My mom did express a lot of positive things, and she really primed me towards facing the world in with having self-love as something that I don't even have to worry about. So yeah, I think what you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you. And it's awesome to hear that you have self-love and that you had that and that was from your mother. That's like heartwarming to me. I love hearing those things. That's awesome. Um, what um what tool, it sounds like you do a lot of reading and researching, which is awesome, and curiosity. Curiosity is a huge, huge, huge
It is.
skill, tool, trait to have. I think that it's been instrumental in my journey as well. I just hungry for knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But what, other than books, which you've already mentioned too, um, what tools do you really stood out as like things that like changed your life for you, like really, really helped you?
Yes. So the one thing that happened when I was fixing my injuries was that my injuries didn't disappear one until I changed my nutrition, which then I
Okay.
actually grew up having ADHD, and I was extremely like I could not pay attention if you yelled at me, which did happen during karate practice. So like when people would speak to me, their facial expressions would distract me from what they're saying. Like I literally, my hearing would turn off, and I couldn't hear what they were saying. I would forget. And so as the big damage and the big how painful it was to lose my identity as this best soccer player in the world, that made me shift things in my nutrition, and that made it good enough to be extremely emotionally allergic to habits that could potentially harm me. And this idea of not being the boiling frog, right? Being, if there's cold water and you put a frog in it and you start to boil it, the frog will cook to death, and it's horrible. But if the water is already boiling, the frog will jump out and survive. So I think it's important that if you're struggling, you're going to have to raise your standards for what is considered harmful. And what you associate pain and pleasure to is going to be very, very important. And what spikes your dopamine and what your dopamine is attached to are all very important subjects. Now, what I noticed when I switched my nutrition is that suddenly my focus became good. I was able to hear people. I was able to not experience brain fog. I was able to just be much more energetic. I wasn't chronically tired and sleepy. And so that was almost like as I experienced that, anytime I went and had something that was incongruent with my biology, just completely impacted my mental state, and I became extremely sensitive to that. So I think the one tool that I would encourage people to look at is to understand that psychology exists in a biochemical environment, and that therapy and psychological work and adjusting your mindset is extremely powerful, and it has a huge influence on your biochemistry. So, and there is science to support that. And neuroplasticity is what therapy is all about. What Emily is helping you to do is to create a much better neurological response to different situations throughout your day. But it's important to respect your biology, and that your energy levels are not just something in your mind, and that you can just simply, oh no, I decide to be energetic now, and if I'm not, then that's completely my fault because I am, just not there. I don't believe in it. I'm not committed enough. I'm not trying hard enough. So kind of a similar lesson to what I experienced in my first business is hard work isn't enough. And it's not just about working hard, and that your strategy does matter, and your strategy matters a lot. And if your strategy isn't accurate and it's not coherent with how the world works, or how science works, or how our brain works, then you're going to have a very hard time, and you're going to burn out. So I think using curiosity as a way to achieve that potential, and increasing your potential for finding the accurate strategy, is very important. So those are, starting with psychology is important. And I actually made this live in my Facebook group the other day. Is that, like, I was like, warning, until you get this right, you will not achieve anything. And it is truly to be neurologically, on an emotional level, tired of where you're at. And it is that emotional, you leveraging negative emotion to push you away, just like that frog would jump out of boiling water. And so when I set goals with my client, we don't actually just focus on the beautiful vision. We actually create a hell that, if we don't change anything, here is how things on a rational level could unfold. If we keep stagnating, if we don't take this seriously, here is how our life could look like. And we do create heaven, the beautiful vision, the things that can lead us to a much better place, that can lead to a place where we're actually able to contribute to the people we love. So, and then we connect it with the actions that will get us there, so that we do create some polarity. Because ultimately, it's not necessarily about, bathing in negative emotion does destroy your self-control. And that's another book. It's called Willpower Instinct. But having intense negative emotions associated with certain actions that could lead you down the wrong path leads to higher levels of willpower, because you basically don't have to use your willpower. Willpower is kind of going against your instincts, but it's better to use your willpower to design those emotional instincts, which Emily is so great at. So it's, yeah, I think those are some of the tools.
Amazing. Every sentence you have, I'm like, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. You've raised some really awesome points. I think that when it comes to, you mentioned visualization, using visualization as a tool is like really powerful. And it's interesting that you create a hell with your clients as well, because when I was thinking about what it was that finally got me to get sober, I think it was the fear
Mm,
of staying stuck and staying stagnant and staying in my hell. That
yeah,
was more scary to me than the unknown
pain
and
is more
taking the leap
powerful.
of faith.
Yeah,
And like, it was, I got to the point where I really realized this is
mm,
scarier than anything else. So let's just
yeah,
try something. Um, and also with regards to what you said with the psychology coming first, I do believe that if you get your mind right, the body will follow. And when I got sober, I then, you know, within 5 months, I dropped like 13 kilos, but it just dropped.
mm,
Like literally, I didn't consciously even say I want to lose weight. That wasn't
yeah,
my issue. It was, I was just working on my mind, on my emotions. I was healing, like my things, and the weight dropped off. Like
yeah.
it was insane. Um I
Actually, I
think
have two things I can add, but continue.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say we're running out of time, and I think
Yes.
you and I could probably talk for hours. But I really think that what you're doing is awesome, and I think that your approach is fascinating. And I can see why it would be so effective, and why it's, you know, been working so well for you. Nutrition as well is such a huge factor, and so many people don't take any notice of it. But what I would like to say is that it's going to be, I think, my next post. I was working on it last night. Is that we're human beings, and people forget that like humans are mind and body, and then they forget the being part. The being part is the energetic part, and
Mm,
we're mind, body, and energy, like the emotion, and it's all interconnected. And then what I bring from my organizational consulting training is that is it's a system, just like any organization has a
yeah.
system and the different departments that work together, and it, you know, this, you know, this and this work together to affect that department and that department, and you know, you have the input
Mhm.
and the output. It's a
Yes.
system. And we are like, you can apply the same kind of theory or model, that we're a
Yes.
system as well, and it's all interconnected, and it all affects one of, you know, it's all working together. And people don't really seem to get that. Like they say the mind is separate from the body,
Yeah.
and emotions are something to kind of not talk about and be ignored.
Mhm.
But it doesn't work like that. We don't work like that. So
Yeah.
I think it goes a long way in how to really function and fulfill our potential is when we focus on the whole system, holistic, you know. So um awesome. Krystian, thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or say? Because
Yeah.
otherwise we'll
So
go for it.
definitely, just to add and kind of wrap up, serotonin is actually your neurochemical of self-image, and it really governs what you think of yourself.
And it's
And that's
produced in the gut.
yes, 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 very much so. And it's so so there is biological correspondence to what we're talking about. Self-love is not just fairy dust. It's very real. So it's self-respect, importance. And when you quit your vices and you're finally win the battle over them, your dopamine is actually able to channel to new things. And rather than rather than having coping mechanisms like food or anything else, you actually become much more balanced and in a better place. So
100%. Thank you. Krystian, you are awesome. Please send me all of your relevant links, and I'll put them in the description so that everyone can have a look. And thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye bye.
Bye.